Day 202 of the war in Gaza, and the IDF has deployed 2 reserve brigades into Gaza in preparation for an offensive operation in Rafah. The Army says the planned operation is ready and awaits government orders. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Day 202 of the war in Gaza, and there is increased movement ahead of an anticipated operation in Rafah. 2 IDF brigades were inserted into Gaza and will secure and widen the corridor held by the Army along the central Gaza north-south highway. They will also secure the U.S. aid pier erected on the northern Gaza coast. Some 40,000 tents have been erected in evacuation sites to absorb civilians fleeing areas before they are attacked. Israeli leaders have said repeatedly that victory in Gaza is impossible without taking Rafah, crushing remaining Hamas forces, and recovering any hostages held there. The Army says the plan to operate against Hamas in Rafah is ready and only awaits orders from the political echelon. Hamas has 6 remaining battalions in the Gaza Strip, including 4 in Rafah. 2 Hamas battalions remain in central Gaza in the Nusirat and Deir al-Balach camps. The other Hamas brigades in northern, central, and southern Gaza were destroyed during months of IDF operations. Hamas operatives have attempted to return to some of those areas, and they are targeted when they are uncovered. The IDF says 2 terrorists were killed in an airstrike in central Gaza after trying to launch rockets at Israel. The pair was spotted by troops of the Nachal Brigade before a fighter jet was called in to strike them, along with a rocket launcher and nearby weapons depot. More than 30 other airstrikes were carried out in the Gaza Strip over the past day.
Israel bonds, the heartbeat of solidarity, the powerhouse of support. When the Hamas-Israel war hit, Israel bonds stood tall, proving we're more than just an investment, we're a lifeline. Investing in Israel bonds isn't just a financial move, it's a declaration for resilience, strength, and a better future for Israel. Join us and let solidarity echo through generations.
In the north, IDF fighter jets and artillery hit 40 Hezbollah targets in an unprecedented wave of strikes across Lebanon. This amid a claim by Defense Minister Gallant that half of Hezbollah commanders were dead and the other half in hiding. ILTV's William Sharon reports.
It was the most intense several minutes. Israeli air and artillery strikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon since the start of the cross-border fighting in early October. Dozens of terrorist targets were hit in a matter of minutes. The tactic was described as a fire belt, used by the Air Force for the first time in the conflict. Lebanese media outlet claimed that the IDF hit 17 Hezbollah targets during the wave of attacks. The targets include weapon depots and other assets belonging to Hezbollah. The IDF says the strikes are part of the effort to destroy the organization's infrastructure along the entire border area. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant visited the IDF Northern Command and said during the course of the fighting, half of the commanders of Hezbollah forces have been killed and the rest were in hiding.
התוצאות המבצעיות הן מרשימות מאוד. מחצית ממפקדי חיזבאללה בדרום לבנון חוסל. אלה האנשים שהיו אחראים על הפעולה ההתקפית, על הרצון לפגוע באזרחי מדינת ישראל. אנחנו גרמנו לכך שאו שהם מתים, או שהם מתחבאים ומפקירים את דרום לבנון לפעולתו של צה"ל.
Gallant said that the government's top priority is to bring the residents of the north who were evacuated at the start of the war home safely. And from the military operation perspective, this is a crucial time, said Gallant.
Well, the Islamic Republic has spent many years sending weapons and funding to terror groups on Israel's borders. In fact, they have developed a major presence in Syria with their Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. After the attack on Israel and Israel's response, however, that may be changing. Following Israel's retaliatory strikes on regime sites in Iran, as well as multiple assassinations of IRGC officials in Syria, the Islamic Republic of Iran has begun a retreat of most of their IRGC forces in Syria. The move comes amidst a fear Israel will continue to target regime officials and Hezbollah operatives, as they have been in recent weeks. The areas the Iranian regime has left include southern Syria and Damascus, and they've also reduced manpower in the areas they are still active in. While the regime claims they don't have a military presence in Syria, watchdog groups estimate around 3,000 Iranian military personnel are based in Syria. Despite the partial withdrawal, likely a sign of weakness by the regime, Israel is likely to continue to target Hezbollah and IRGC officials in Lebanon and Syria in the coming months. Well, the U.S. Congress did pass a massive aid bill to support democratic allies such as Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. $26 billion was allocated for Israel, with $17 billion specified for defense support. But beyond this support for Israel, the same aid package also included sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran following their attack on Israel, their increasing support for terrorism, and their crimes against the Iranian people. The primary piece of legislation, the Masa Act, named after the slain 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian Masa Amini, who was killed by the morality police, focuses on Iran's human rights atrocities. Here to speak with us about its significance is Sarah Raviani, an Iranian-American activist and visiting fellow at the National Union for Democracy in Iran. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, we've discussed the U.S. Congress's bill and its impacts on Israel, but one of the bills included within this package was a sanction bill to hold the Islamic Republic accountable, the Masa Act. So what is the Masa Act and why is it so important?
So the Masa Act is a piece of legislation that sanctions the supreme leader and president of Iran for committing human rights abuses and supporting terrorism. Something that's new about the Masa Act is that it sanctions Khamenei and Raisi for human rights abuses specifically.
Now, Sarah, you met with many lawmakers about this bill as part of your work with Nufti. What was the response from members of Congress, and were any members of Congress against this bill?
So from the very beginning, we had a lot of support from members of the Iranian American diaspora rallying behind this bill, which really helped us progress it further and make lawmakers listen to us. We had a lot of support from both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrat, and it was largely a result of the support from the Iranian American community. And I saw over time, this bill took nearly 2 years to progress to the point that we're seeing today. Over time, more and more support was possible, not only because of the Iranian American community's efforts, but also because the regime continued its human rights abuses and obviously supporting terrorism like we saw after October 7th, which increased support. More people were willing to listen, and lawmakers really made an effort to hold the regime accountable.
Speaking about sanctions, why are they so important when it comes to the Islamic Republic? So much so that it was included in this massive defense bill by Congress. More specifically, how will the Masa Act help curb the sinister influence of the regime globally?
So the Masa Act for us is just a first step in holding the regime in Iran accountable. It's up to us as people from the outside to do everything that we can within our respective governments to enforce sanctions on the regime and isolate them as much as possible for committing human rights abuses and supporting terrorism. There are several other pieces of legislation that are included in this package that will also aim to hold the regime in Iran accountable through sanctions.
Now, what kinds of things are these additional bills focused on?
We also saw the passage of the SHIP Act, the Fight Crime Act, and the No Technology for Terror Act. So these are all focused on oil and missiles and everything that the Islamic Republic does to export terrorism, not only against its own people, but to people across the entire Middle East.
Now, the Iranian diaspora community has expressed a lot of unity on this bill. Have you faced any opposition? And if so, how have you dealt with it?
So we did face opposition, and largely the Iranian American community was apolitical for several decades. And we had voices here in Washington, D.C. that claimed to represent the interests of the Iranian American community and the people of Iran. through our activism and through our mobilization, we were able to finally bring the true voice of not only the Iranian American community here to Washington, D.C., but also the people of Iran here to Washington, D.C. So this was average, everyday Iranian Americans that really rallied behind this bill to support it, so much so that many of them came out to Washington, D.C. to advocate, and that really changed the dynamic here. I spoke to many members of Congress, people that have been involved in politics for decades, who said that they had never seen mobilization like this before, and we're very proud of our community for mobilizing and organizing in the way that we did. And so it was largely all thanks to the Iranian American community, who really set aside their personal differences and decided to come together and finally speak for the people of Iran instead of those that were misrepresenting our voices.
Well, let's hope that the U.S. and other Western democracies will follow through with these sanctions and we can see some real support for the Iranian people. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
After signing the massive military foreign aid bill, U.S. President Joe Biden restated his ironclad commitment to Israel and its ability to defend itself against Iran and its proxies. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
President Biden said that the security of Israel is critical, and the $17 billion in military assistance would allow Israel to defend itself against Iran and the terrorists it supports.
My commitment to Israel, I want to make clear again, is ironclad. The security of Israel is critical. It will always make sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself against Iran and terrorists it supports.
Biden gave assurances that the U.S. can replenish Israel's air defense and provide other critical needs against Iranian attack.
The United States is going to help replenish Israel's air defense and provide other critical defense so Iran can never carry out the destruction it intended with its attack 10 days ago.
The president also said that the people of Gaza were suffering the consequences of the war that Hamas started, and the U.S. is working intently to get as much aid to Gaza as possible.
They're suffering the consequences of this war that Hamas started, and we've been working intently for months to get as much aid to Gaza as possible. This bill includes $1 billion for additional humanitarian aid in Gaza. We're going to immediately secure that aid and surge it, including food, medical supplies, clean water. And Israel must make sure all this aid reaches the Palestinians in Gaza without delay.
Just before signing the bill, the White House announced that President Biden had met with 4-year-old former hostage Abigail Eden.
I've just come from being with the president where he got the chance to meet with Abigail Eden, the 4-year-old American who was held hostage by Hamas in Gaza and was released last November as part of the first hostage deal that the president was able to help broker and negotiate. But it was also a reminder in getting to see her that there are still Americans and others being held hostage by Hamas, and we're working day in, day out to ensure all of them also are able to get safely home to their loved ones.
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has spoken out about the chaotic situation on American campuses and how young Jewish students are being targeted by anti-Israel mobs. Let's take a closer look at what he had to say. American campuses have become a battleground in recent weeks, with violent, unsanctioned anti-Israel protests popping up across major university campuses. At Yale and Columbia, physical assaults of Jewish individuals has taken place, while on all the campuses where uprisings have occurred, there have been explicit calls to genocide against Jews, celebration of terrorism, and calling for the bombing of Tel Aviv, amongst other violent and anti-Semitic messages. The situation has rapidly spiraled out of control as campus administrators in places like Columbia have failed to deter the harassment and threats of these anti-Israel students. In recent years, Qatar has poured billions of dollars, often unreported, into major American universities and shaping their faculty to embolden racist anti-Semitism. Many believe that this is a major contributing factor to the radicalism on campus. So far, hundreds of protesters have been arrested, but many more continue to hold the illegal demonstrations to demand their universities divest from Israel. On Wednesday, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu joined the chorus of criticism of the handling of these violent protesters.
What's happening on America's college campuses is horrific. Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. They call for the annihilation of Israel. They attack Jewish students. They attack Jewish faculty. This is reminiscent of what happened in German universities in the 1930s. It's unconscionable. It has to be stopped. It has to be condemned, and condemned unequivocally. But that's not what happened. The response of several university presidents was shameful. Now, fortunately, state, local, federal officials, many of them have responded differently, but there has to be more. More has to be done.
Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments echo the sentiments expressed by many members of U.S. Congress who have been following the dramatic scenes on U.S. campuses unfold. Well, as those dramatic scenes continue to unfold at anti-Israel protests in the West, there have also been numerous violent attacks against Jews at these demonstrations. This, of course, is where the same violent protesters have been openly calling for genocide against Jews and supporting terror groups like Hamas. One of the victims of such attacks this past week in New York City was Miss Israel, Noah Kochva, who is here to speak with us about what happened. Noah, thanks so much for joining us today. Just to start, can you share with us what happened in New York at the anti-Israel protest, and how are you doing since the incident?
First of all, hi. What happened to me was really scary because I was just in Times Square. I had my Israeli flag with me because we were doing videos about Israel. And they just saw us. They saw that we were from Israel. And they decided to come at us, to attack us, to tear down our flags. One of the guys had a Star of David necklace, and they literally tore it down. And one of the guys came to me with his sign and just tried to attack me with it. And he succeeded. He punched me with his sign stick, I guess, near my eye. I would say that I'm okay. It was very scary. It took me a few days, just like to shake it off, shake that hate feeling out of me, because eventually my physical damage wasn't really severe, but it's hard to let go from the feeling that someone literally hit me based on just who am I, based on the fact that I'm from Israel or that I'm Jewish. He had no idea who I am, and that's I believe that's like the awful thing here, that these people, they don't really know that the people that they're attacking, just like based on their religion, based on the fact that they're from Israel.
Now, what was your experience there at the protest? What kinds of things have you heard these anti-Israel protesters saying? Were there other violent incidents that you are aware of?
Yeah, they're just like the normal thing, that we're baby killers, that the IDF doing genocide. I've been called Miss Genocide because they recognize me as Miss Israel, so they changed my name to Miss Genocide. All kinds of things. There's violence there all the time, because that's the problem. They are trying to say that they're protesting for peace, but in fact they're using violence, which doesn't make any sense to me, like to a normal person, I guess.
Absolutely. How has the NYPD or other government bodies responded to what's happening with these protesters, and what do you think should be done to stop them?
So when, in my case, there were police guards near us, and we tried to tell them that this guy attacked me, and they literally couldn't do anything. There were like 5,000 protesters. So all they did was just to tell us to stay away from the mob, because they were actually afraid. We couldn't really use them the caps, even though that it was our right to be there with Israeli flags. So they literally just pushed us away. And to prevent these kind of things, I feel like it's more something that with the people themselves, because normal people, like if we're comparing our protests, our rallies to them, we never use violence. All we do is sing Am Yisrael Chai. All we do is hug each other, cry together. And that's, I feel like, the difference. Just like to understand that we are not them.
What is your message to Jewish students in particular who are facing this kind of violence and even threats on campus?
First of all, I'm sorry that someone, after all these years, it literally feels like I went to Colombia yesterday and I felt fearful. I feared for my life. And these kind of things are things that happened in Germany years ago. So first of all, I'm sorry that I have to go through something like that. But I feel like all we can do right now is exactly what they're doing. I've seen all the kidnap posters that are hanging inside the university and the Israeli flag. And just to speak up, raise your voice. I feel like everyone in Israel, every Jewish community, everyone in the Jewish community is with them. We all just need to stay united and show them that we can't be broken.
Absolutely. Continue to be strong and unafraid as much as possible. Thank you so much for your courage in the face of such extremism. Israel is very lucky to have you. Thank you so much, Miss Israel Noah Kochva.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yesterday, Hamas released a propaganda video of Israeli-American hostage Hersh Goldberg-Polin, who has been held under Hamas captivity since October 7th. His parents have responded to their son's sign of life in a video statement, making a desperate plea to bring all the hostages home. ILTV's Ariella Lachiani has more details.
Yesterday, Hamas released a propaganda video of Israeli-American Hersh Goldberg-Polin, who has been held captive in Gaza by the terror group since October 7th. In the nearly 3-minute-long video, Hersh is seen missing his lower arm as he demands the Israeli government returns all the hostages from Gaza. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum have released a statement saying that Hersh's cry is the collective cry of all the hostages. Their time is rapidly running out. The 23-year-old had been attending the Nova Music Festival when the massacre began, at which point he'd fled to a shelter with over 20 others. Hamas terrorists surrounded the shelter, repeatedly throwing grenades at them. Goldberg-Polin's friend was able to throw back most of the grenades, but was eventually killed along with others, whilst Goldberg-Polin's lower arm was blown off. Goldberg-Polin's parents have issued a plea to all of the leaders who have been negotiating for a hostage deal to date, stating, "Be brave, lean in, seize this moment and get a deal done to reunite all of us with our loved ones and end the suffering in this region." In a video statement, Hersh's parents, Rachel Goldberg-Polin and John Polin, go on to say that seeing the video of Hersh today is overwhelming. We are relieved to see him alive, but we are also concerned about his health and well-being, as well as that of all the other hostages and all of those suffering in this region. They concluded the video statement with a message directly to their son, urging him to keep going.
And Hersh, if you can hear this, we heard your voice today for the first time in 201 days. And if you can hear us, I am telling you, we are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight with lows of 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow and over the weekend, we will see cloudy skies, seeing highs of about 31 degrees Celsius or 87 degrees Fahrenheit. That is all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our website, iltv.tv, with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader, wishing you a happy Passover, be well, and thank you so much for watching.